The night shattered when a teenage boy burst through the swinging doors of a roadside biker bar, rain soaking his hair and fear carved into his face so deeply that every hardened rider felt it at once, because danger has a smell and it rode in with him like thunder, and in that frozen second the hum of engines outside and the clink of glasses inside seemed to stop as if the world itself leaned in to listen to what fate had dragged to their table. Before the story pulls you deeper, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that strangers can become family in the darkest moments, take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this are built on people who still care. The boy's name was Ethan Cole, 16 years old, shoulders hunched like he had been carrying an adult's burden for years, and the girl he was trying to protect was his little sister Lily Cole, 8 years old, small enough to hide behind his ribs when the world grew too loud, and the danger hunting them had started weeks earlier when their mother passed away quietly in a charity ward, leaving behind debts, secrets, and a man who believed children were property rather than lives, a man named Victor Hale, whose shadow fell long over their neighborhood and whose patience had finally snapped. Ethan had learned quickly how invisible kids become when adults look the other way, how doors close when fear opens, how police reports get filed and forgotten, and how running becomes a skill you never wanted to learn. So he ran with Lily through alleyways slick with rain, past flickering streetlights and boarded shops, clutching a backpack with a change of clothes and a photograph of their mother folded so many times it felt like cloth, until the only place left on the map was the biker bar. His mother once pointed out from a bus window, a place she said looked scary but was full of people who understood loyalty better than most. Inside, the riders were a collage of scars and silence, men and women with leather vests stitched by years of road and loss, people who had buried friends and held on to codes when everything else failed, and as Ethan's legs buckled and his voice broke into breathless pleading, the room didn't erupt, it hardened, because danger recognized its mirror in men and women who had stared it down before. Lily was hidden first, wrapped in a borrowed jacket that smelled of oil and wind, led gently to a back room by a woman named Marissa King whose eyes softened only when children were near, while Ethan was given water and time to breathe, and in those minutes the story spilled out in fragments of missed meals, threats whispered through cracked doors, and footsteps outside at night that made sleep impossible. The challenge wasn't just keeping two kids safe, it was deciding how far protection should go when the law had already failed them, and that weight pressed on the bar like a storm cloud, because these riders knew the line between help and harm, and they walked it carefully. Outside, engines rolled past slow, searching, and a black sedan idled too long under the broken neon sign, and the bar became a living thing, lights dimmed, doors watched, phones quieted, and every rider took a position that looked casual to an outsider but meant readiness to anyone who understood. Ethan, shaking now that the adrenaline faded, felt the guilt settle in, the fear that he had dragged these strangers into his nightmare, and the doubt that he was strong enough to be what Lily needed, but strength has a way of growing when shared, and as the night stretched, plans formed that didn't involve fists first but foresight, witnesses, and daylight. They fed the kids, found clean clothes, and made calls to people who still answered when Marissa King asked, including a retired social worker named Helen Brooks who had seen every kind of broken system and knew how to push back, and a lawyer called Daniel Mercer who believed law could still be a shield if held right. The suspense tightened when Victor Hale came looking, his presence announced by the silence he left behind on the street, and the riders didn't chase or threaten, they documented, recorded, and waited, letting his impatience expose him, because the hardest thing for a predator to face is a community that refuses to be isolated. Hours passed like days, and Ethan learned what it meant to be seen without being judged, how hands that could break also knew how to build, and Lily slept for the first time in weeks without crying, curled against a jacket that smelled like safety. When dawn finally bled into the windows, the bar transformed again, from sanctuary to strategy room, and the riders escorted the children not in a roar of engines but in a quiet convoy to a place that had light and paperwork and people who would remember their names, and when Victor Hale tried one last time to assert control, he found doors locked by law and witnesses waiting, his threats recorded, his reach shortened by accountability. The change didn't come like a miracle, it came like a slow sunrise, court date scheduled, protective orders filed, school enrollment secured, counseling arranged, and Ethan's biggest challenge became learning to be a teenager again while still being a brother, and that struggle was real and messy, filled with nights where fear returned uninvited and days where hope felt fragile. But every time doubt crept in, there was a message, a visit, a reminder from the writers that family can be chosen. And promises kept. Months later, the biker bar hosted a small celebration that didn't make noise online but echoed loudly in the hearts that mattered, Lily laughing freely, Ethan taller and steadier, Marissa King smiling with that quiet pride that comes from doing the right thing without asking for credit, and the writers returning to the road with a lighter weight than they carried before, because saving 2 kids had reminded them why codes exist in the first place. If this story has been building something inside you as it unfolded, if you felt the tension ease and the hope rise, then please take a moment near the end of this video to like, share, and comment, because your engagement helps stories of compassion travel farther than fear ever could. And before we close, leave a comment telling us which moment stayed with you the most, because voices like yours keep these stories alive. In the end, Ethan learned that bravery isn't loud, it's persistent, Lily learned that safety can be real, and a room full of writers learned again that the road means nothing without the people you protect along the way. And if this story touched your heart, let that feeling move your fingers, because kindness grows when it's seen and shared.